Coogs House. It looked like Houston found themselves on offense on Saturday, but is that the best themselves?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, a podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Jenkins. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below if you think beans go in chili. Long conversation. My wife and I disagree. Tell us what you think. Do beans go in chili? A lot to get into today. I do want to talk about offensive personnel and some of the shakeups and stuff like that that could be coming. Who knows? I want to talk some about the pass game because I think that there's a lot to work on there. But first, I think we need to make sure we give credit where credit's due and explore how the run game was so dominant with inside zone. Now, today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy, and a lot more on that later. But for right now, all I got to say is it looked like the Houston offensive line was using a lot of 5 Hour Energy, a lot of propulsion forward, to say the least, in this game. Houston had a lot of success running the football, as we've mentioned. They had 42 carries for 237 yards in this game. It was in the post-game show, reaction show on Saturday. I think what's interesting about this one is as you look at it, 42 carries is a lot of carries. And I thought in watching it live the first time, and like, man, they really are hanging their hat on zone. And folks listen to the show for a long time know one of my pet peeves is every offense has to have a thing they're going to do when it's like they got to, settle things down. It's like their go-to thing. They need 3 yards. What are you going to do? Are you going to run a fade spout? Are you going to run a QB power? Are you going to run the speed option? Are you going to run mesh? What are you going to do? Okay. And different good offenses Houston's have had different versions of that. Admittedly, like Shannon Dawson was not my favorite offense coordinator, but he ran mesh as that thing a lot, right? Houston last year with no offensive coordinator did not have that. Imagine that. Didn't go so well. This year through 2 games, I wasn't sure what that was going to be. I knew in past stops it looked like Ken Barbe had more of an inside run game. Sometimes it was power, sometimes it was zone. Power's a gap scheme for the folks that are learning more the X's and O's kind of stuff out there. In this game, it was clearly zone. They ran 42 run plays. 31 of those run plays were zone. One of the 42 was a true quarterback scramble, was not even called a run play. And then in college football, you count sacks as rushes as well. So 3 of those got counted in the count as well. So for the folks keeping track at home, of the rushes that actually counted as rushes, 38 of them, they ran zone 31 times. For all intents and purposes, that's every snap. That's really, truly every time they run the ball, they're running some version of zone. And so they ran what we call a split zone in coaching. Again, I was a run game coordinator for a few years at a high school. And I have to say that, and I'm pulling it up on the board for the video audience. I'm going to try and describe for the audio audience. But what we're talking about here is you line up, and I have a basic twins look, but you could also motion into it. They did a good job, I thought, on Saturday of motioning guys across. But either way, right, as you motion into it, you have a play side, tight end, H-back, receiver, whomever, coming across behind the zone and kicking out the opposite direction, taking out a read player, right? So it's a clear give, a handoff give, right? And this split action allows your backside tackle to climb to space. Your backside guard can help take over the nose tackle. It really, and truthfully, as the zone works to the play side, kind of frees up a lot of cutback lanes. It also, with a slight little bit of misdirection, will typically hold a backside linebacker's pursuit angle, certainly will hold a backside safety's pursuit angle, and open up cutbacks if they don't slow down. But if they do slow down, open up stuff on the front side because there's less pursuit from the backside of the play. It also, bluntly, is a play you can run with a tight end and have another H-back on that side. It's really hard to block back with an inline tight end, but I guess Houston did do it some as well. And so I've got the light circles here, my motion guys. But regardless, it's the same kind of setup where you're blocking back across from behind line of scrimmage. And Houston did this extremely well, right? Re'Shaun Sanford was on the field for 30 runs, and all 15 of his carries were zone run plays, right? I misdiagnosed it tweeting things because the way that backside split action was happening, it almost looked like they were running a fold or something. It happened so tight to the center at some parts. But regardless, this is what Barbay decided was going to work, and it worked really, really well. I mean, the very first touchdown, Stacey Sneed gets that zone play. He gets the tackle's butt, the B gap right there, and sees the tackle fold his defensive end inside and bounces it right outside of him, and he's off the races, and it's him, man, Jack, and one defender between him and the end zone, right? Like that's good. That's all good news, right? I think what's interesting here is the way you saw the running back plays distributed. Re'Shaun Sanford, I'm going to always first say Stan. I got to correct myself there. Re'Shaun Sanford's on the field for 30 run plays, right? Stacey Sneed is on the field Re'Shaun Sanford's on the field for 30 plays, period. Stacey Sneed is on the field for 18 plays. Jamarian Burnett was on the field for 11 plays. Parker Jenkins, only 4. Sanford's on the field for 15 runs. Burnett, 8 runs, right? Sneed, 7. Jenkins, just the 2. And what's interesting in breaking that down is like Stacey, we know Stacey Sneed's so great at catching the ball out of the backfield that he's going to be on the field he's on the field for 18 plays, only 7 of those being run plays. That makes sense. He catches the ball really, really well. Re'Shaun Sanford being put in as the starter, getting the bulk of the touches, or the bulk of the plays, also makes sense. I believe there were 64 offensive plays called in this game. Sanford played 30. It's nearly half of them. That also makes some sense, right? The interesting thing I think we're learning more about, we'll talk about the depth chart later, is that like this type of running style really fits Re'Shaun. This type of running style really kind of fit, at least on Saturday, Jamarian Burnett, right? This type of running style really fits some guys just because of their running styles and the way that they have eyes on the holes and the gaps and things like that, right? It's kind of so folks that like really are in the NFL game remember like LaShawn McCoy was famous for this at the NFL level where he'd get like slow play line of scrimmage and then burst out of it, right? That's kind of actually what you want to do in this zone play because as we pulled up again for the video audience, as you press that line of scrimmage, you kind of have cutback lanes based on where the defensive pursuit is. If the defensive linebackers fast flow to the way that direction the offensive line is blocking, well, you can cut back and they all back shoulder their zone blocks. If the linebackers and safety level freeze or wait or go the opposite direction, even with the split action there, then suddenly you've got some play side stuff. And if your tackle can scoop or hook the defensive end out there, as we saw with Stacey Sneed, that can turn into a big time gain on the outside when you have a little bit of space. And so that you kind of want to slow play it a little bit behind the line to see where the flow is happening and not happening, where your gaps are opening up at all 3 levels, really, because you got to assume the safety's playing downhill and so on. And that's really what Houston hung their hat on. And for all the crap I've given the Houston offense since the show's inception almost 2 years ago, they finally found something that they said, this is going to be our thing. And frankly, I know Rice is not Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is not Georgia, and so on, right? But on the whole, this is the kind of thing that they should be able to do against other Big 12 teams. They've got a pretty strong offensive line. Pancake Hunter anchors in the middle. Tank Jenkins has been in college for a long time. He's a very true veteran in the most veteran of sense. This really ought to be something that Houston can do against other Big 12 competition to get a few more wins in the win column, right? This is not something that feels like a one-off if they continue to establish this, because as you see this offensive line go, I know I'm going like an extra 30 seconds of this segment, but as you see offensive lines grow, right, you'll see less rotation because how they play at this zone really will have to be some gelling, teamwork, etc. Because they're going to be working through double, double, double. Now I got to get my assignment. Double, double, double. Now you got to go get your assignment, right? You're also going to have eyes on the linebackers in certain spots for those different kind of peel offs and things like that. And all of that is to say that this game will get better with time as the season goes on. And it's very clearly something that I think, obviously Rice is, like I said, not UNLV, not Oklahoma, not Georgia, etc. But it was also week 3 of doing this. And I think that you're going to see that kind of progression as well. Now, they also just had a lot of energy in this game. And we'll talk some about how the passing game didn't seem to have that same juice. But if you need that juice, or if you need that energy, if you need something to get you going throughout the day, tackle a to-do list, whatever the case may be, 5-Hour Energy fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long to-do list for work or a list of DIY projects at home, 5-Hour Energy is just a simple shot you can take and check everything off that list. If you're like me, you always got a long teacher, coach, podcast, dad, all those things, right? 5-Hour Energy helps get the job done with zero sugar and convenient portable size. The perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. If you're just go to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com. Get some 5-Hour Energy product today. You can use promo code LOCKEDONCFB and receive 20% off of your order. Offers only valid through September 30th, and order cannot be used to promote other promotions, and only get on regular orders, not subscription orders. So make sure you go take advantage of it today. 5hourenergy.com. All right, as stoked as I am about the run game and the established version of the run game that Houston's rolling with here, we got to talk some about how they put the ball in the air. For what it's worth, Donovan Smith in this game, 12 of 21, 140 yards and a touchdown, right? Not exactly the 24 of 28 he was in Norman, and people were critical about some of the passing in a qualitative sense in that one as well. And I said this in the post game, and so I'm not like rehashing it all out here. I do wonder if missing spring practice and the injury that we never really knew the full extent of until after he'd had surgery already last year, and so like it feels like there's been a step backwards, or there's like still more progress to get done before we get back to even on all of that, and it's not great. It's not great. And of his 12 completions, 5 were behind line of scrimmage. And not only were the 5 behind the line of scrimmage, his touchdown was a play thrown behind line of scrimmage to Boogie Johnson. Boogie got the ball in space. Boogie made a guy miss. Boogie got downfield, and Shamar Hobbs-Lee decked someone downfield. I don't even know what position that poor kid played. But on the whole, right, that was one of the highlights of the game. And it goes down as a 44-yard touchdown pass. I think maybe it's 45, whatever it was, right? But the ball went side to side behind line of scrimmage. And that's fine. I'm not ever going to tell a quarterback I'm coaching or watching to not take the easy money when it's there. And I'm never going to tell a quarterback that I'm coaching or watching to not get the ball into a guy like Boogie Johnson's hands. Those are not things I'm advocating. Yes, make the completion. Yes, get the ball in his hands. Those are both things I want to happen. The problem in this game was that kind of felt like all Houston was going to do, right? The 12 completions were all behind the line of scrimmage or within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. And I think that, 10 of the I'll back all the way up. I got a list of stats here. I'm trying to read it off quickly. 13 of the 21 attempted passes were less than 10 yards down the field in air. That includes behind line of scrimmage. Now, Donovan was 10 of 13 on those throws. That's crazy good percentages. That's good. Of the 8 passes further downfield. He was just 2 of 8. And that's worrisome because when you go back and read what he was good at doing at Tech, there was some arm strength thing. Like he could throw it downfield. The issue was more about accuracy. Well, accuracy in that sense meant like throw it to the wrong team. In this sense, it meant like throw it to the dirt, I think. And I worry about that because at some point, right, a defense is naturally going to tighten down the coverage and play a little bit more press and force you to, pass block for a second longer and go over the top of them, right? And Houston, bluntly, has the receivers to do that. Manjack, Boogie, Jonah, Mekhi, Shoulders, all these guys, they've got the receiver talent to do all that. It's about making sure they got a guy that can get them the ball in those situations. And this year, and I think Donovan actually looked a little better this last year. This year, Donovan's having some trouble doing that. Now, could Cincinnati be a get right game for those kind of things? Now, as he's getting more into this flow of the offense, he kind of looked like he was having fun out there on Saturday. He had the big touchdown run, the big celebrations. That's my dog over there. The big celebrations, like he was more the fun Donovan we got to know a little bit better last year, maybe. But on the whole, I'm not seeing the play yet, and the unfortunate part is that I don't really know why, right? It just hasn't been happening. I'm not big on. We'll talk about the depth chart stuff in the third segment. I think quarterbacks are an interesting position that you don't just, from a confidence perspective, because so much is on their plate on the field, you don't just yank them every time they make a bad play. That doesn't work. And anyone arguing that doesn't work. Sorry, it just doesn't. And I do think there's got to be consistency there. And if it's consistent things you're worried about, then obviously that's a different kind of situation, right? Thus far, with the exception of a play that I would argue was schemed very well that got Manjack open, I think my buddies over at Locked On Sooners say a busted coverage play. We haven't seen a whole lot of the accuracy deep. Certainly not like last year when like Sam Brown catches one deep over the middle or whatever. We haven't seen any of the jump balls in the end zone to Matthew Golden and even giving guys those chances, right? Obviously, those two receivers are no longer here either. But those were chances given to those guys that I'm not. I mean, I trust Manjack to go get that. I trust Jonah Wilson to go get that. I don't know why it's got to be a whole lot different. I know the offensive coordinator is different because we actually have one now. But I don't know why else that would be different. I do think there's something about pressure in Donovan this year. I don't know if that has to do with the injury or not from last year. He was 4 of 12 on throws when he was blitz, and the other two blitzes blitzes they sent were 2 of his 3 sacks. And so that's indicating to me that there's trouble there, whether it's miscommunication with him in the line of the blitzes or feeling the pressure, or there's some subconscious thing coming off of an injury, which is a very real thing that quarterbacks work through and takes time. All of that is to say that Houston did a great job in the screen game and a great job in the short passing game. And I wondered after the Oklahoma game if that was going to be the thing they hung their hat on. The stark difference between the short passing game and the deep game, though, makes me a little worried because at some point they're going to run into press corners. They're going to run into buzz down safeties, short boxes. And at some point, it's going to come down to, okay, we've got the receivers that can go over the top. They don't have a guy that can keep up with Jonah Wilson. Can we get him the ball? Right? Boogie Johnson did all of his work on Saturday on one catch he caught behind line of scrimmage, but he also has those same burners to go deep. Right? And so at some point, we got to make sure we're working to get to that. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I know that Barbet and I know they're all working on it. But that's got to be the next progression of this offense. I'm not saying they got to take a deep shot every 4 plays. I'm not. While I like being that guy when I was calling plays, I'm not that kind of guy that has every team has to do that. I get that, right? I do think though that they have to have the ability to do it at the quarterback position and the offensive line position giving him time, all 5 of those, because truthfully, they've got the talent to do it outside. And that should not be a limiting factor in this offense. And to this point, it kind of feels like it has been. Now, I'll talk some about rosters and depth charts and stuff because I think that's kind of the hot button topic with this team this year for folks being negative. But first, I want to make sure we talk a little bit about this game and our buddies at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, but we got a little bit something different for you right now because right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. And let me tell you, on NFL Sunday like today, it was great. From YouTube and YouTube TV. Go to YouTube TV, the base plan. You'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon game, out-of-market game. All you need is Google account, current form payment. You can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook right now. They've got the line at Houston as I'm recording this at +5.5. I feel like Houston actually wins this game on Saturday. We'll talk more about that throughout the week, but I'm definitely taking Houston at +5.5, and I'm doing it at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so depth chart, hot button issue after every game, win, lose, tie, draw. I think the big thing coming out of this one, as I alluded to in the first segment, was the running back discrepancy. I mean, even with Re'Shaun Sanford moving into the starting position, and we did see Parker Jenkins take a weird twist of his ankle in the Oklahoma game, and I don't want to I have no reporting on this. PJ and I are not tight, like when I'm texting him back and forth about his ankle or whatever. I do wonder, though, with a running back, especially in the zone system, if that ankle injury is kind of limiting. And it's also Rice. Like they were in a they very handily won that game. Do they need him on the field to do it, right? Those things are absolutely probably factors. But he had just 2 carries. And he was listed on the depth chart throughout the week as the backup running back, and Stacey Sneed played more than 4 times as many snaps as him, right? And at some point, you wonder, like, what's going on here? I think PJ does a lot of things like well. One of the things that Jenkins did last year that I thought he did really well was accelerate from the handoff to the line of scrimmage, right? And power counter systems where you're hitting the hole hard, that's really important. In this zone kind of stuff, you kind of have to be able to shift gears really quickly and slow play at the first 3 or 4 steps, right? Parker's got to adjust. Re'Shaun's clearly adjusted, right? Stacey's clearly adjusted, right? Those things I think are really, really interesting to watch, keep track of. But it also could be as simple as, well, he's just been hurt, right? Like that's the way that goes. After the first practice of the year, no one's fully healthy, and sometimes even before then, right? Like there's some of this that's wear and tear. And again, they were not ever in doubt that they were going to beat that Rice team. It felt very comfortable throughout. Why not rest him? Like, give him a couple plays, make him feel good, but like rest him on the whole. I get that too. I wonder, and this is after the passing segment, another depth chart thing that I'm looking at here. If Houston's going to become a team that throws a lot of screen and throws a lot of passes by line of scrimmage and a lot of short passes for big yards because of yards after catch, how much more often can we see Mekhi Mews and Boogie Johnson on the field at the same time? By that, I mean like even on the same side of the field at the same time, because truthfully, they can both take the top off too. I don't mean to say they don't have that kind of speed, but at some point, a defensive coordinator is going to be, okay, we got to make sure we bracket Boogie side to side because they're not beating us over the top, and we got to make sure he can't wiggle out anything, right? If you start putting multiple athletes like that on the field, and it could be Kobe when Kobe's back healthy, it could be Marquise. There's a lot of guys that can do these kinds of things. But I wonder if you went like 21 personnel, 2 tight ends, and really got this run game going, because that way you got both tight ends there in the block on your split zone. And then your other 2 receivers were both these scatty, shaky kind of fast twitch, can't tackle them in a phone booth kind of guys like Mekhi and Boogie Johnson. Then suddenly it's like, okay, you got lots of options here that work good at all of them, right? And if you're going to go out there and cover those guys wide for the screen pass, we're going to hit you inside zone, down the middle, down the middle, down the middle. And you're going to pack your guys in for the inside zone and make sure we don't get any yards on the inside zone play, the split zone play. And we're going to put the ball out there for the little quick screen, right? I think there's something to do there too, to kind of mix those kinds of things up. I do think at some point though, Jonah Wilson's got to be more involved. I mean, Jonah Wilson's kind of guy, and he redshirted last year, so it's technically just a freshman now. But Jonah's going to have the ability, the physical ability to play on Sundays. He's that kind of good at receiver, right? And he's a burner deep. He runs fluid routes over the top, takes the top off of defense as well as anyone we've had in a long time. I think that we got to make sure that we find ways to take advantage of that. And so maybe that's the limiting factor here. It's not that we don't want to have Mekhi Mews and Boogie Johnson on the field at the same time. Maybe it's that we also have these other threats and we're trying to incorporate all of them on the field at once, even if we're only getting a few of those completions made. Which leads me to the last thing I thought about the depth chart and offense. We were told in the offseason that Zeon Chriss is going to get kind of a special package, or it was hinted at and practiced and whatever, right? And Zeon Chriss is, from his Louisiana days, is a very elusive runner. He's an electric runner. He's got some wiggle to his game. We only really saw it on one run play in the UNLV game to open it up, right? But we did see they were going to try and give him a series. They found an artifact. He got a little banged up. Otherwise, he might have gotten more series. And they didn't play in Oklahoma, right? And then in the Rice game, we kind of thought, we saw him warm up, and he didn't get any meaningful series. And I wonder if there is some sort of a wildcatty, zoomy package where if they're not going to trust him to throw the ball, and I'm not saying that I have any reason not to, except that they didn't let him throw the ball against UNLV, really, do they need to have that go kind of package at some point along the way? I think Zeon's the kind of athlete that needs to be on the field, but I don't know. I think that hearing that he was warming up and doing fine and all that, and then not seeing him in the game was surprising. Not seeing him in a meaningful part of the game was surprising to me. I wonder if there's some of that's like let him get ready for Cincinnati, kind of like talk about Parker, right? Or what the deal is there. But I'm interested to see how the depth chart shakes out this week. Should be out very soon as you're listening to this. So we'll be following and tracking it, and I'll be tweeting about it at X. I'm at Painsworth512 on all your social media sites. And then we'll talk a little about the defense. We got some basketball stuff to talk about this week. Got to talk about Cincinnati a couple times at least. Lots of stuff to get ready for there. Former AAC member, also in the Big 12 with us now. And I like drawing them and the comparisons with them, and we'll get more into that this week. If you're looking for a second listen today, not later this week, but today, go to Locked On Big 12. Drake is breaking down the whole conference. He's doing a really good job of it. So make sure to check out Locked On Big 12 for your second listen of the day. Locked On Cougs, a primary Locked On podcast network. It means your team every day. Go Cougs.